Today I'm going to talk a bit about how participating in game spaces can help us develop an active digital media literacy, become more forward-leaning in our take towards new technology, and all the nice things that are connected to that. But before we go there, let me start with a short story. The other day, I was having a normal work day. I work at the university. What my normal work day means and what it means for so many other people besides sitting down most of the time is that I used computers, big and small, applications, programs, interfaces, the lot. I communicated with students, with colleagues, using email, instant messaging systems, online course platforms. I uploaded files, I downloaded files. I had to renew my library books in the meanwhile, so I had to use another system. I had to report a work trip, so I had to use another system. I had to report my productivity, yet another system. I had to communicate with both kindergarten and school, yet two other and totally unrelated systems. And finally, I had to fill in for my boss and log in and use a very difficult to use and frankly pretty intimidating billing system, because if you click wrong, you sort of, the money is going somewhere. Anyway, I must have used at least a dozen different communication tools, channels, devices, operation systems throughout the day. And that's a normal day. I find it pretty hilarious, actually. It's a challenging world out there. Unfortunately, I don't think it is going to get any simpler in that regard, or less intimidating in all its technological glory. In fact, I believe quite the opposite. I'm quite a big science fiction fan, and I believe what some science fiction authors and thinkers have been saying for a number of years already is that once technology becomes complicated enough, it will appear like magic to us. We will lose sight of what is happening and why is it happening. It will become a black box, shutting us out, forcing us into the role of a spectator, in a way, not able to make a difference. And of course, that's then the moment when we start to sacrifice small animals in order to ensure that our ticket reservation went through, or smoking incense in front of the computer that has mysteriously fallen silent. And unfortunately, I think in some ways we are already there. We do know that there are a great many people who feel ill-equipped to deal with the challenges of contemporary digital media. We can even see this in young people. I mean, there was the time when basically people who have been born in the 90s and afterwards have been dubbed digital natives. I think this was premature and highly optimistic. What I see is young people, students coming into the university today, too many of them have given up. They have already given up. They think that I can use technology a bit, but it's really not for me. It's something, I can't change what it is. I don't want to learn new things already at that age, at that time. And I think that's a big problem. Now, surely there's something we can do about it. And I actually believe there are many things we can do about it, only one of which I'm going to present to you today. I think that the key is to try to learn to take an active, forward-leaning stance on technology. Not to be afraid of it, not to expect somebody else to come to tell you what to do, how to think, but to learn to somehow tinker with the systems. While you could take a course, and perhaps you should take a course sometimes, I don't believe that the answer to this problem lies within the realm of formal education. I believe that we have to go to where people do things, so the actual environments where they are doing things, such as online communities, online gaming environments, all kinds of environments where people in a self-guided way, independently and together with each other, learn, teach each other, and take this technology to be their own, in a way. It's about mastery. It's not about being afraid of something. This answer started to appear to me as a couple of years ago. I was doing a project with a group of students, and we were looking at different forms of online communities online. And one of the cases we stumbled upon was an online game that was developed for preteens and teenagers. And in this game, you are taking care of a virtual stable. So you are growing up your horses, you are training them, you are competing against other youngsters, and it's all fun and games. What we soon found out was that the normal things you would expect to find in an online community did appear as well. We found people negotiating norms and rules. We found emerging uses of language and so forth. What was also possible in this environment was that it was possible to enhance the way your stable looked like and other aspects of what you were doing there if you knew how to use digital image processing software, such as Photoshop, for example. And what this had led to was an emergence of kind of viral market system where certain young users who had the necessary skills were offering their services to other users in exchange for in-game currency. So it was like pimp my horse type of thing. And it worked really wonderfully. And some of the results were really beautiful. And I remember thinking at that point when we were looking at this interaction of theirs, I remember thinking about this, that where else would an 11-year-old girl or boy learn to use digital image processing software to this extent, if not in these kind of playful game spaces where you come together and it means something to you. You do it together with other people. You take this forward-leaning stance, this idea that, hey, this is something I can do. And you are not afraid of failure. It is not an issue of somebody coming and judging you, for example. Of course, there's that as well. But you're not going to get a grade out of it. It's just, let's experiment. This attitude has been called a modding attitude. Modding is, in the game parlance, when you take something like an existing map of a game or something like that, and then you change it, or you create new content to an existing game. So the modding attitude, the idea that I'm not just consuming something, but I'm actually starting to think about how could I change this? What could I do differently? What could we do to enhance the experience in a way? And I think this is what we should look for. Now, this kind of modding attitude is not easy to force. This is what I have come to believe. It is not easy to design. You can try that, but it is something emergent. It emerges in human interaction. It is difficult to predict, for example. It is difficult to control. And that's fine. That's actually fine. It just means that we can't wish it to be. It just means that we have to be open to the possibility that it is there. We can go to look for it. We can cultivate it possibly, but we can't just make it happen. This is sometimes a problem. Let's say from the viewpoint of formal education, for example, in many cases actually, when there has been talk about introducing games to classrooms, for example, I have heard counter-arguments from teachers. The counter-argument basically goes like this. It's so much trouble. I mean, there's the whole system we have to set up, and even if the system is set up, then we still have to install all these programs. There's the troubleshooting. Then I don't really know how to use the systems either, and then we would need to teach the kids to use them. And all this has to be before we get to the actual point. And of course, when following this kind of line of thought, the actual point, the actual learning goal is then, learning mathematics or learning history or learning how to write. That's the learning goal. But to this counter-argument, I basically say, precisely that's what you should be learning. Dealing with the whole media system, the whole environment, learning to troubleshoot, learning to tinker. And it's not only the kids who need to learn that, it's you who needs to learn that. And you have to be open for this. A similar example came to me last year. I was involved in a project, and there was talk with a person who is involved with. She was a healthcare professional, And she was working for a private company. They do physical rehabilitation, especially for elderly people who have suffered from illness or injury, and you know, they were trying out different methods using game-based approaches, and what they had noticed was that basically the games did what they promised. So all was well there. They got good results when it came to physical rehabilitation, but they noticed that something else was happening as well. They had many cases where the activity of participating in those game spaces actually triggered something else in the participants, allowed them perhaps to re-evaluate their take on and their stance on technology, to reach this kind of idea that, hey, this is actually not that difficult. Hey, this is actually something I could do. Perhaps, you know, I will I will go to the store and buy one of these for myself, you know. And I think this has value in itself. Now, as I mentioned, something like this, as organic, emerging, and difficult to predict as this, is not really easy to plan for or design or implement in a formal structure of learning. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. I think we should create spaces for these things. We should encourage ourselves and others when we see this happening. I say to all of you now, you know, go out there and learn a new game. You know, change it, teach it to somebody else. Let yourself be taught. And that this is not only important, and not even specifically important for kids, but it is also important, and perhaps particularly important, for adults, for teachers, all kinds of educators, for parents, for everybody who feels that they are being left to the sidelines or are a bit afraid of the way technology is evolving and developing all the time. It's for you and me and everybody. The quest to reach this playful, forward-leaning take on technology through participation in these game spaces. So I go with you and I say, let's try it. Thank you.